Be me, Meredith. I'm in my early 40s, a director of marketing, and I've built a life for myself that most women would kill for. Got the house in the nice suburb after the divorce, the career that's always on an upward trend, and a clear vision for the future. My life is curated, intentional. Every choice is a step forward. The centerpiece of that life is my daughter, Vivian. She's 15. She's not just my daughter, she's my legacy. My chance to raise a woman who won't make the same mistakes I did, like settling for a man who gets comfortable with mediocrity. My ex-husband, Sean, was the reason we split about 3 years back. There was no big blow-up, no dramatic affair. It was simpler and, in a way, more frustrating. He just stopped growing. I was climbing the corporate ladder, attending seminars, networking, expanding my worldview. He was content, an engineer, happy to fix things, clock out at 5, and spend his weekend in the garage. It felt like I was driving a sports car while he was happy to just keep pedaling a bicycle. Eventually, the distance becomes too great. The divorce was amicable on the surface. The court gave me primary custody, which was the only outcome that made sense. I was better equipped to prepare Vivian for the modern world. Sean got her every other weekend and a few weeks in the summer. A perfect arrangement, I thought. Enough time for her to see her father, but not so much that his traditionalist mindset could undo all my hard work. My mission was clear: mold Vivian into a strong, independent woman. Our home is a testament to this. Books by powerful female authors line the shelves. We have structured evenings. Monday is debate club prep. Tuesday is volunteering at a women's shelter. Wednesday is advanced math tutoring. I made sure she understood the system she was born into. We'd have discussions at dinner about the glass ceiling, the subtle ways society tries to put women in a box, the importance of financial independence. Never let a man be your financial plan, Vivian. I told her constantly. Your career is your foundation. Everything else is an accessory. My friends, all successful women in their own right, would praise my approach. You're raising a future CEO, Meredith, one would say over brunch. She's so articulate and aware. I felt proud. I was giving my daughter the armor I had to build for myself, piece by painful piece. Her weekends with Sean were a source of low-grade anxiety for me. He lives in a small, practical apartment across town. It's neat, but it smells faintly of sawdust and motor oil. It's the opposite of our bright, minimalist home. I'd ask Vivian what they did, and her answers were always infuriatingly simple. We fixed the leaky faucet in his bathroom. Dad showed me how to change the oil in his car. We went to the hardware store to get parts to fix his lawnmower. My blood would simmer. He was dragging her down into a world of blue-collar manual labor. I was teaching her to run a boardroom, and he was teaching her how to use a wrench. It felt like a subtle form of protest, his way of instilling his own values of what a person should know. I saw it for what it was, a quiet reinforcement of outdated gender roles. He was showing her that a man's value comes from fixing things, from physical tasks. I worried it was his way of planting the seed in her head that she'd eventually need a man for these things. A little bit of toxic masculinity dressed up as father-daughter bonding. That's nice, honey, I'd say with a tight smile. But remember, in the real world, it's more efficient to hire a professional. Your time is more valuable than the cost of a plumber. She would just nod, her expression unreadable. A few months ago, her laptop started acting up. It was slow, buggy, and kept crashing. For me, the solution was obvious. We'll go to the Apple store this weekend, I announced. You need a reliable machine for your schoolwork. We'll get you the new MacBook Pro, a tool for a future leader. Vivian seemed hesitant. It's really expensive. Maybe Dad can look at it? I shut that down immediately. Absolutely not. We are not having your father perform surgery on a $1,000 piece of equipment. We'll get you something new. It's an investment in your future." She dropped the subject. But when she came back from her weekend with Sean, she had the old laptop with her. It was humming along perfectly. "What happened?" I asked, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. "Dad and I fixed it," she said, a rare spark of excitement in her eyes. "He showed me how to open it up. We cleaned out all the dust from the fan, and he had some extra RAM from an old computer, so we upgraded it. Then we backed up my files and did a fresh install of the operating system. It runs faster than when it was new." She was proud, genuinely proud. I forced a smile. That's resourceful of him. Inside, I was fuming. It wasn't about the money. It was about the mindset. He was teaching her a mindset of scarcity, of patching things up and making do. I was trying to teach her a mindset of abundance, of upgrading, of always reaching for the best. He was teaching her to be a technician. I was teaching her to be an executive. The real turning point, the moment I realized I had a serious problem, was the big school science project. It was a physics assignment, something about kinetic and potential energy. It was a huge part of her grade for the semester. I knew this was a critical opportunity. I wanted her to excel, to stand out. So I did what any good manager would do. I delegated to an expert. I hired a private tutor, a woman with a PhD in astrophysics I'd met at a networking event. "I want Vivian to be inspired," I told the tutor. "Show her what a woman in STEM can achieve." The tutor was brilliant, but her approach was purely theoretical. She gave Vivian complex equations and abstract concepts. I'd walk by Vivian's room and see her staring at a whiteboard covered in formulas, her face a mask of frustration. She was falling behind, becoming more stressed and withdrawn. "I just don't get it," she'd whisper, on the verge of tears. "You're brilliant, honey. You just need to apply yourself," I'd say, channeling my best motivational speaker voice. "Push through the discomfort. That's how growth happens." But she wasn't growing, she was drowning. She went to her dad's that weekend, looking completely defeated. I almost felt bad for her. On Sunday evening, when Sean dropped her off, she ran into the house holding a miniature, fully functional catapult made of wood and surgical tubing. She was beaming. "Look, Dad and I built it. This is for my project." She set it on the living room floor and launched a grape clear across the room, where it splattered against the far wall. "We spent all of Saturday in his workshop," she explained, talking faster than I'd heard her in months. "He helped me do the calculations to figure out the trajectory and the force, and then we just built it. I get it now. Seeing it work makes all the math make sense." She got the highest grade in her class. Her teacher wrote a note on her report saying it was one of the most creative and effective demonstrations of the principles he'd ever seen. I should have been thrilled, but all I could feel was a cold knot of anger in my stomach. He had completely circumvented my carefully laid plan. I had provided her with a top-tier female mentor, a connection to the world of higher academia. And Sean had just waltzed in with his toolbox in his workshop and made it all irrelevant. He made my plan look stupid. He made me look stupid. That night, I confronted him over the phone. "You went behind my back," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "What are you talking about, Meredith? I helped my daughter with her homework. I had a tutor for her, a professional. You're undermining her education with these simplistic little projects." There was a pause on his end. Then he said so calmly it made my teeth ache, "She was crying, Meredith. She said she felt stupid and was going to fail. Now she understands the material and got an A. Which part of that is a problem for you?" I hung up on him. He didn't get it. He couldn't see the bigger picture. This wasn't about one grade. It was about teaching Vivian the right way to solve problems. My way. Around last spring, I started dating again. I met a man at a conference. He was perfect on paper. He was a consultant in diversity and inclusion, well-read, articulate, and completely aligned with my worldview. He'd nod along when I spoke about systemic issues and use all the right terminology. My friends adored him. He's so enlightened, Meredith, a true partner. I brought him home to have dinner with Vivian, hoping she'd see what a healthy, progressive partnership looked like. The dinner was a disaster. He spent the entire time trying to engage Vivian in a conversation that felt more like a job interview for a progressive think tank. "So, Vivian," he started, leaning forward with a patronizing smile, "at your age, what are your thoughts on the commodification of feminist principles in late-stage capitalism?" Vivian just stared at him, pushing a piece of broccoli around her plate. I tried to save it. She's very active in her debate club, and they often discuss social issues. He seized on this. Fantastic. A strong, assertive voice is crucial for dismantling patriarchal structures. What's your next debate topic? "The pros and cons of nuclear energy," she mumbled. His face fell for a second. "Oh, well, I'm sure there's a gendered angle to that, too. The inherent aggression of nuclear fission, for instance." She didn't say another word for the rest of the meal. Later, when he left, I tried to talk to her about it. "He's very intelligent, don't you think?" I prompted. She just shrugged. "He sounds like one of your audiobooks." The comment stung more than it should have. It was becoming clear that the daughter I was meticulously crafting in my mind was not the person sitting across the dinner table from me. There was a disconnect, a gap I couldn't seem to bridge with articles, lectures, or carefully selected role models. Vivian was becoming quieter at home, more reserved. She'd answer my questions with one-word answers. She spent more time in her room with the door closed. I chalked it up to standard teenage angst. It's a phase they all go through. She was pulling away, learning to be her own person. That was a good thing, right? Independence was the goal. I was so busy managing the project of her upbringing that I failed to notice I was losing the person. My home, once a carefully controlled environment for her growth, was starting to feel like an empty, silent museum. And I was so convinced of the righteousness of my path that I told myself the silence was the sound of success, the sound of a daughter who didn't need her mother for every little thing. I was so wrong. The legal notice came in the mail on a Tuesday, just a standard form letter from the county family court. It stated that as Vivian had now reached the age of 15, the court was prepared to hear her testimony regarding her preferred custodial parent. It was a formality, the letter said. A hearing was scheduled for a month from now. I laughed when I read it. A formality. Of course it was. I had given my daughter everything: a beautiful home, a world-class education, a philosophy of strength and empowerment. Sean had given her DIY projects and greasy hands. There was no contest. This was just a box the system had to check. I pinned the letter to the fridge with a magnet shaped like Rosie the Riveter, feeling a smug sense of satisfaction. The court was about to see exactly what a strong, independent woman could build. The month leading up to the court date was, in my mind, a victory lap. I doubled down on my efforts, determined to make the court's decision as laughably easy as possible. I enrolled Vivian in a weekend coding camp for girls. "You need to be fluent in the language of the future," I told her, handing her the brochure. I took her to a gallery opening for a feminist artist. The art was mostly abstract, angry slashes of red paint on canvas. "It's about the female rage against objectification," I explained wisely, sipping a glass of white wine. Vivian just stared at a piece that looked like a crime scene. I was so certain I was showing her the world, a world of intellect and culture, a world far removed from Sean's dusty garage. I barely even thought about him. He was a non-factor, a weekend hobby. The real parenting, the important work, was being done by me. A week before the hearing, Vivian got sick, a nasty flu that came on fast. I was in the middle of launching a massive marketing campaign at work, a project I'd been working on for 6 months. The timing was awful. I did what I could. I set her up on the couch with a blanket, a thermometer, and a bottle of Gatorade. I called the doctor and got a prescription sent to the pharmacy. "I have a series of critical Zoom calls today, sweetie," I said, patting her arm. "My camera has to be on. I'll check on you between meetings, okay? Just text if you need anything." I spent the day in my home office, door closed, fully immersed in presentations and strategy sessions. I was crushing it. The campaign was a huge success. Around 7 that evening, I emerged, exhausted but triumphant, to find Vivian asleep on the couch, looking pale and miserable. Her Gatorade was untouched. The doorbell rang. It was Sean. He was holding a small bag. "Vivian left her history textbook at my place," he said, keeping his voice low. I knew she had a test coming up. He looked past me and saw her on the couch. His entire demeanor changed. All business was gone, replaced by pure paternal concern. He walked over, felt her forehead. "She's burning up, Meredith." "I know," I said defensively. "She has the flu. I got her medicine." He ignored me. He disappeared into the kitchen and came back a few minutes later with a bowl of cool water and a washcloth. He gently wiped her face. She stirred, murmuring something. "Hey, kiddo," he said softly. "It's just Dad." He looked at me. "Have you made her anything to eat?" "She doesn't have an appetite," I snapped, feeling an irrational need to justify my actions. He went back to the kitchen. I heard the clanging of pots and pans. 20 minutes later, the house was filled with the smell of chicken soup. He brought a small bowl to her, helped her sit up, and patiently fed her a few spoonfuls. He didn't leave until she was asleep in her own bed, with a cool cloth on her forehead and a glass of water on her nightstand. As he was leaving, he turned to me at the door. He wasn't angry. He just looked tired. "She's a kid, Meredith, not an item on your to-do list." He left. I stood there in my perfect silent house, the smell of his soup hanging in the air. The silence felt different that night. It wasn't peaceful. It was accusatory. The day of the hearing arrived. It wasn't in a big, intimidating courtroom, but a small, neutral-colored office with a large table. A woman, a family services mediator, sat at the head of the table. She had a kind but professional demeanor. I was dressed in a sharp, tailored pantsuit, my boardroom armor. I felt confident, powerful. Sean was in a simple button-down shirt and slacks. He looked nervous, out of his element. He just sat there, hands clasped on the table. Vivian sat between us, staring straight ahead. The mediator started with the pleasantries, explaining the process. It was informal. The goal was to hear from Vivian, to understand her perspective. "This isn't about finding fault with either parent," she said, looking from me to Sean. "It's about what's best for the child." I gave a gracious, understanding nod. The mediator turned to my daughter. "Vivian," she began gently, "the court recognizes that you're old enough to have a significant voice in your living arrangements. We'd like to hear from you. Have you thought about where you would prefer to live?" This was my moment, the culmination of years of hard work. I gave Vivian what I hoped was an encouraging smile. She took a deep breath. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at her father. She looked directly at the mediator. "Yes," she said. Her voice was quiet, but perfectly clear. "I have. I want to live with my dad." The words hit me like a physical blow. The air left my lungs. The entire room went silent and seemed to shrink in on me. I'm sure I had a look of complete shock on my face. A confused, frozen smile. I blinked. "I'm sorry, what? What did you just say?" The mediator held up a hand. "Let's give her a moment, Mrs. Evans." I ignored her. I turned to Vivian, my voice rising. "Vivian, this isn't funny. What is this?" She finally looked at me. There were no tears in her eyes, just a calm, sad resolve. "It's not a joke, Mom. I want to live with Dad." The dam of my composure broke. All the years of self-control, of curated poise, vanished. I whipped my head toward Sean. Pure, hot rage surged through me. "You did this," I hissed across the table. "You poisoned her against me. All those weekends spent in your stupid garage, filling her head with your backward, simplistic view of the world." Sean looked genuinely stunned. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. "I gave her everything." My voice was shaking now. "I gave her the best of everything. Tutors, enrichment programs, a network of powerful female role models. I was preparing her for a real future. And you showed her how to fix a lawnmower." I was practically shouting. The mediator was saying my name, trying to calm me down, but I couldn't hear her. I turned back to Vivian, my heart feeling like it was being squeezed in a vice. I was pleading with her. "Why? Vivian, just tell me why. After everything I've done for you, everything I've sacrificed, you choose him? You're throwing away everything we've built." That was when my daughter stood up. Her 15-year-old frame seemed to gain a new kind of strength. Her voice didn't waver. It was as steady as a rock. "You didn't build it for me, Mom. You built it for you." She finally let it all out. "My whole life with you feels like one long performance review. You're always tracking my progress, optimizing my schedule, managing my brand. I'm not a person to you. I'm your project, your legacy project." The mediator was silent. Sean was silent. They were all just watching. "When my laptop broke," Vivian continued, her voice gaining momentum, "you saw it as a chance to buy a status symbol. Dad saw a problem to be solved. He sat with me for hours and didn't just fix it. He taught me how it worked. He gave me a skill. When I was failing physics, you hired someone to dump theory on me. Dad helped me build something. He made it real. He trusted me to use power tools. When your boyfriend came over, he asked me about my views on capitalism. The first time I met him, Dad asked me how my friends are doing. He asked me what level I'm on in my video game. He actually listens to the answer." She took another breath, her gaze locked on mine. "And when I was sick, you were busy. You were on a call. He came over and made me soup. He sat with me. He didn't see my being sick as an inconvenience to his schedule." She gestured toward Sean. "With him, I'm learning how to be a capable person. With you, I'm learning how to be a talking point at one of your brunches." She looked me right in the eye, the final blow. "You taught me how to be a strong, independent woman, and my first independent decision is to live with my father." I sat back in my chair, numb. There was nothing left to say. My entire philosophy, my life's work, had just been dismantled in a quiet office by a 15-year-old girl. I didn't fight it. The court approved the change in custody. There were papers to sign. I barely remember doing it. The move happened 2 weeks later. It was quick and quiet. Vivian didn't have much to pack. Most of her life was already in her backpack. The night after she left, I walked through the house. It was immaculate, perfectly organized, silent. For the first time, it didn't feel like a sanctuary of success. It felt like a tomb. My legacy was gone. The project was over, and it was a failure. A few months have passed. The autumn leaves are starting to turn. I talk to Vivian on the phone a couple of times a week. The calls are awkward at first. I don't know what to say. I try not to give her advice or manage her. I just ask her how she is. She tells me about her schoolwork. She tells me about the old motorcycle she and Sean bought. It's a rusted piece of junk, but they're taking it apart piece by piece, cleaning everything, rebuilding the engine. She talks about carburetors and gaskets and torque wrenches with an enthusiasm I haven't heard since she was a little girl talking about dinosaurs. Last Sunday, I was sitting alone in my kitchen when my phone rang. It was her. "Hey, Mom," she said. "Hi, sweetie. Everything okay?" "Yeah, I just wanted to call and say hi." We talked for a few minutes, about nothing and everything. Before we hung up, she said something that stuck with me. "You know, Dad says you're the most driven person he's ever met. He told me you taught him what ambition looks like." After the call, I sat there for a long time, looking out the window. The project failed. My vision of who my daughter should be was wrong. But my daughter, Vivian, she's okay, more than okay. Maybe now, finally, I can start getting to know her. Not the project, the person.